thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen before we crack on. I think that should be good. You should be able to see my screen. As you see, I have the chat open. So if you have any questions or comments as we go, by all means, pop them straight in there. Just a little bit of a background. My name's Kevin. I'm a developer advocate at a company called Vonage. We used to be called Nexmo. So if you are wondering if you've heard of Nexmo, that is now where I work at Vonage. Previously, I was a coach for Major League Hacking. I've run a developer events agency, so a lot of running events, which is feels like the old world now. And my role at Vonage is around supporting communities, mainly in London, but also now online because everything's going online. I'm going to get the shameless plugs out the way right at the beginning. So, well, I mean, this one isn't so shameless. We'll be using some of these tools today. So, at Vonage, we are a cloud communications platform, so a bunch of communication APIs, whether it's SMS or messaging on various platforms like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, voice over apps, but also phone calls, which is what we'll be using today, or video and various others. We have APIs that help you use those. As I've alluded to, we'll be using this today. For the shameless plugs though, some stuff that I hope will be useful though. I also, without my Vonage hat on, run a community conference series called You Got This. It is aimed at technical people, but there is no technical content. At You Got This events, we talk about core skills needed for a happy, healthy work life. And there's a load of talks from previous events that you can watch, and I would highly recommend that you watch them because I think that they are invaluable skills that don't get spoken about enough in your kind of day-to-day or at technical conferences. Finally, just a note really that this workshop that I'm running today is a version of a stream that I did on the Vonage dev stream. There are currently 5 shows that happen, I think 3 a week. Lauren Learns Things, where Lauren works with a colleague to learn things, the developer drop-in, where around a theme, developers are free to kind of drop in and ask questions to our team, and that's quite a nice chill time. The low-code hour, where we talk about using low-code tools like Zapier and Node-RED. No Experience Required, which is my stream, which is a completely beginner-friendly coding stream. You don't need to know any code to come along, and by the end we build a project. And then finally, on every other week, alternating out with me, is Michael Jolly with the Late Night Build, which is like a late night show meets a tech conference. There's like a hackathon that runs throughout the stream, but also a talk show and a musical guest and other bits. It's really fun. So I wanted to let you know about this because if you enjoy this workshop, there's more like it on my stream, No Experience Required, and also my colleagues. Right, they're the shameless plugs out the way. Let's talk a little bit about what we'll be building today. So this will, as all good stories start, there is as all good workshops start, there is a story. So a couple of friends of mine live on a remote island at the very, very top of Scotland. About 200 people on the whole island, and they're several miles apart in where they live. So they have like huge amounts of crofting land each. And then coronavirus happened and people had to stay indoors. And the minister at the church kind of figured out how to use Zoom to deliver sermons, which is great, except for those people on the island who don't really have internet, which it's amazing to think that some people don't have access to internet, but of course that is the case. So those people have effectively been cut off from their communities, but also can't take part in community activities like church sessions. So I worked with them for an evening to build this project, which got turned into this workshop here. And essentially the way it works is that the minister records a little MP3 on their phone and uploads it to a web platform once a day. I mean, they can be batched or done on the day, it doesn't really matter. There's an MP3 associated with each day, and people can dial in using can call a real physical phone number. And that's my dog. He's super into this, and they get to hear today's thought of the day from the church. And in the case that there isn't anything, we have like a little fallback, like text to speech message that gets read out, so people understand there isn't already something. This obviously has a lot of generic, like it's quite a generic project. It has other contexts, so you could use it to like publish briefings. to do news of the day for various areas, like, you know, tech news of the day, dial into a number or whatever. So that's what we'll be building today. We'll be using, if you came to my first workshop, we'll be using some similar technology. So I'm a big fan of serverless. We'll talk a bit about what serverless is, how to get set up using Netlify Functions, writing your first Netlify Functions, and then building a Netlify function for this project. And then we will be using Airtable as a database. I also love Airtable. It's really nifty. It's kind of Google Docs meets relational databases. I'll get to show you a bit of it in a moment. But before we crack on, I probably should have told you this at the beginning to give you time. There are a few things you're going to need. I'll give you pause points to go grab them when it's time, but I would encourage you to kind of hit go now and start getting accounts. You'll need a GitHub account. I think most of you hopefully should have one of those already.
Correct. Yep, everyone has one as part of this program.
Wonderful. You will need a Netlify account. So you'll need a Netlify account. You can actually sign up for Netlify with your GitHub account. So hopefully that kind of speeds up that process. So we'll need this. I'll talk to you a bit about what Netlify is in a moment. You will need an Airtable account at airtable.com. I've set up a fresh account for this. So yeah, you'll need a Netlify account. And when it's time, you'll need a Vonage API account as probably expected, right? We'll be using some of the APIs here and some of the services provided here. You'll also need Node.js installed on your computer. I hope that you are okay with that and you have it already. If not, nodejs.org is where to go get a nice, easy installer for your operating system of choice. So I'm going to type that in the chat just as a recap. You are going to need a GitHub account. You are going to need a Netlify account. Okay, I can't do multi-line messages, whatever. You're going to need an Airtable account, and you will need a Vonage API account. But when we get there, you'll need it. And obviously, we'll be building this in Node.js, so you'll also need that. Again, I would encourage you to go do this now, but I will pause at points to, you know, have you catch up if you haven't got these accounts to hand. All right, we're just going to crack on, start writing some code, and I will explain things as we go. So firstly, let's do a quick introduction to serverless. I will keep this as brief as possible. Traditionally, if you want to run applications that have a server-side component, like an Express application, for example, you need to have a server running with that application running. The resources used are being paid for, regardless of whether or not that application is being used. And with that also comes things like maintenance and potential downtime and other considerations you need to make when hosting web applications. The way serverless applications work, or serverless functions work, is you write small encapsulated pieces of code, you host them online, they're available at a URL, which you can use in your applications, like an API call. When that API call is used, the provisions are spun up, your function runs beginning to end, and then it spins back down. You pay for usage. In the context we'll be talking about it in Netlify, I'll show you their pricing, but it's very, very generous on the free tier, so we will definitely not touch that at all. But you pay for generally a combination of how long your functions run, and how many times they run, and the sometimes how much power they draw, but that's a bit more complex and not always the case. So that's a little bit of an introduction to serverless. We'll be building this in a serverless fashion so we can host it and just kind of leave it up, and it won't cost us anything, but it will always be running. And hopefully you'll get to use the kind of serverless knowledge that we will use today and also apply in other projects. So I've got this empty folder here somewhere on my machine, I don't remember. And I'm going to create, I'm not even going to create a new file. I'm going to open a terminal in this folder. You can use an external terminal if you want, a terminal emulator, whatever you want, but I'm going to be using the terminal built into Visual Studio Code in the directory that is currently empty. If you have questions, by the way, do feel free to use the group chat. I will take pause, as I say, at a couple of points, and I'll answer questions at that time. So we are going to firstly type in npm space init-y to create a new package.json file. Now that we've got this package.json file, we can start. Can I move this out of the way? I can indeed. Now that we've got this package.json file, we can start installing packages from npm. We're going to need 3 packages for this to work. So we can type in npm install, and we can space separate the packages we want. So the first one is Netlify-lambda. So that's what we'll need in order to build Netlify functions locally before we push them up to Netlify. Next, we will need Airtable -plus. Now, Airtable have their own client library. It's just Airtable. I find this kind of slight abstraction on that a little easier to use and explain. If you are aware of kind of promises in JavaScript, their default library does not support promises, and this essentially promisifies the Airtable library. We'll be using this, so the API reference on their site, it just alters very slightly, but their Airtable plus docs on GitHub are also pretty solid. And then finally, we'll need a .env package, and we'll use this in order to store and access our environment variables, variables that we don't want pushed up to GitHub and made public, like API keys and secrets. So we'll hit enter. So if you weren't quite typing at the same speed, I'm just going to pop this in the chat so you can copy and paste that into your terminal. This will take just a moment. So again, Netlify lambdas to build Netlify to run like a development server locally. We have Airtable plus. Oh, I did see some errors. Errors. I don't think, just taking a very quick scroll. I think this might be no Xcode or CLT version detected. Do you want to know what I updated macOS the other day? Let's see if it becomes an issue, and if it does, we will figure that out when the time comes. So we've now installed the packages we require. We'll notice over here in package.json, they're now listed in dependencies, but we're not done in package.json. We need to add a couple of scripts. I'm going to write them, and then we can talk about them once we've written them. But there's 2 we're going to require. The first is called Netlify::serve. Anyone else not got a confirmation email from Nextmo or Vonage? Kept saying my regular email was invalid. If that is still happening for the length of this workshop, I'm not going to pause the workshop to support, but I will afterwards. Right, so Netlify::serve. You can call this anything you want, but I think this is very explicit. Netlify::serve. And then the value will be Netlify lambda serve functions /source. We'll create another one called Netlify build, where we'll essentially just swap out the word serve for build. And then we just need to get rid of that trailing comma for this to be valid JSON. Let's talk a little bit about what these are doing. So we'll run this command, Netlify run, npm run Netlify::serve, and it's a shorthand for this command, as is the build. What serve will do is it will take any functions that we've written in a folder called functions/serve /source, which doesn't exist yet, and it will spin up a local development server, watch for changes, and as we change our files, it will build them and make them live on a development URL. Netlify build does very much the same thing, except it doesn't have the development server, so it will just build files in functions/source. On that note, let's go ahead and create functions/source. So our functions will go inside of this folder. There's one more step we need to do before we can write Netlify functions. So we have installed some packages. We've updated the scripts to include these couple of scripts here. We've created this folder. And now we are going to create one final file called netlify.toml, T-O-M-L. This is just a quick 2-line config file. Build in square brackets, indent, and functions equals, and then in quotes, /functions/build. So let's just talk about how all of this plays together. So what this is saying is the Netlify functions that are built and ready to go will be accessible in a folder called functions/build. In package.json, this line and the one below it is going to take files that are in function/source and build them into functions/build. I think the easiest way to do this is to demonstrate it. So we're going to go down here and type npm run Netlify::serve, and we should get a Netlify::serve. It helps if you save your files, Kevin. Kind of irrelevant because we should hit an error anyway. We hit an error because there are currently no files in functions/source. And sorry, I keep saying function/serve. I'm getting really function/source. Let's go ahead and create the most basic Netlify function we possibly can. I'm going to call this hello.js. Right, what do we need to do here? The first thing we're going to do is we are going to just note that in order to create a Netlify functions, we are going to be assigning a function to exports.handler. So this will be the function that runs when this Netlify function is called. So we're going to create an asynchronous function. It takes two arguments, event and context. So everything in here will run whenever we hit this URL. This one's going to be really straightforward. We're just going to return an object, which is what you need to do when you return a Netlify function. And we're going to need to provide some headers. We're going to need to provide a status code. And we're going to need to return a body, which must be a string. So let's talk about these three. I think someone just didn't turn off their mic, and it's not that they are pained and need my attention. If that is the case, pop it in the group chat. So firstly, we have the headers. Now, whenever you make a web request, it comes with a set of headers. And whenever you get a response, it gets sent with some headers. Now, some of those headers describe which servers, which applications can access this server or this cloud function. For this application, we're just going to leave it as an open book. We're going to set it up so it doesn't matter where you're calling this function from, locally, on a server, on another server, wherever, you'll be able to hit this. You'll be able to hit this Netlify function and get a response. There are two headers we need in order to get this to work nicely. The first is called access, and I'll copy and paste this into the chat if you're following along. Access, control, allow, origin. And the value will just be a star, a wildcard, anything. Allow any origin. The second header will be access, control, allow, headers, and the value will be content type. So this is the headers. It's coming to the chat now. Next is the status code. I'm not going to spend too long talking about HTTP status codes, but you might have seen some before. 500 is a server error, 404 is not found, and 200, a number, not a string. 200 is everything's okay. Finally, the body, as I say, needs to be a string. We're just going to say okay. This is a Netlify function. It doesn't do anything. If we wanted to do stuff, we'd do it up here, and we might change what's returned as a result. It just returns a status of 200 and a body of OK. Let's go and run npm run netlify serve again. And we'll give that just a moment. And we now see a few things have happened. The build folder has been created with a minified version of our function. And our source version is here. And the names of those files match. Now, just as a note, every time you save any file in the source folder, it will regenerate items in the build folder. So don't go editing things in the build folder, because the next time the source files build, your changes will be overwritten. So just bear that in mind. The build folder is there though. And this is actually what is running whenever we use this function. I'm going to open my terminal to test another terminal to test this endpoint. We're going to just do something very simple here. We're just going to curl HTTP localhost 9000, and that's 9000 because it says here Lambda server is listening on 9000. Hit enter. You've requested the root of yes, sorry, localhost 9000/hello, and we see. The first time we got a 404, sorry, not found because the root didn't exist. The second time we got a GET request to /hello, and we responded with a 200, and the value was OK. So just to show you that again, 200, the GET request to /hello, and the response in the body was OK. So this is your first Netlify function. Congratulations if you've never written one before, or you've never written a serverless function before. It's fun. I really like it. So we're going to move on now. Before we write any more code though, it's probably time to introduce the other part in this, which is Airtable. I'm going to go over to my browser here, to this Airtable account. This is a fresh account, so expect kind of slightly annoying prompts around how to use the platform. But you can hit add a workspace. Doesn't really matter what I call it, MLH Fellows. And in here, we will create a new base. So a base you can think of as a database. Start from scratch. Thought of the day. Lovely stuff. Okay, I really do not want this tool. Thank you. I don't want that either. Okay, let's talk about, and I don't want that. All right, let's talk about what's going on here. So if you've seen a database before, this hopefully should look somewhat familiar. We have a number of tables. So they're kind of tabs at the top. So you have a number of tables. I'm just going to ignore my dog until he gets too much. Tell me if he gets too much. Then we have a set of fields. Now, fields can have types. So there's a whole set of defined types. Compared to your average database, this will probably have slightly different types, but the common ones you expect. Single line text is a string, date. Phone numbers just add a little bit of validation if you're using Airtable online, but we'll be using it via their API, so we would need to be in control of that anyway. Formulas, durations, percentages, and so on. This first field here, we are going to call date, because of course we're going to have one record for every day. This first item here, this first column, you could liken to a database primary key. So it's not enforced that they're unique, but the idea is you should try and keep these unique. And we'll make this a date type. You can pick any date format you want to display it in. It doesn't change the underlying data type. I will pick friendly because I think it is nice to be friendly. So there we are. So that's our first field. It's a date type. Its name is date. I'm going to just delete this notes one. This next one here, we're going to call file. This will be where we upload the MP3 file for this day. So let's populate this. So today's the 19th. So we'll make the middle one the 19th of June. We'll make this one the 18th of June. And I suppose we'll make this the 20th of June. And we're going to need some audio files, some MP3s. You can upload any MP3s you want, but in preparation for today, I may or may not have recorded some film quotes, And in a Google folder, you can download them. They're just some film quotes. So you can go ahead to that URL in the chat. For those of you who are watching on demand, this is the URL. You can go to lws.io/film-quotes, and that is a Google Drive folder with just 3 MP3s that you can download and use as your 3 MP3s. In fact, I don't think I have these on my computer anymore. So let's go ahead and just download these. Let's go download them to my desktop. So we have one from Fight Club, one from Endgame, with somewhat spoilers, so just bear that in mind, and one from Back to the Future. All right, so we've now got some audio files. Originally it was music, but I was streaming on Twitch and I was a little worried about playing music on Twitch, so I recorded my own. So we have Fight Club. We can just drag and drop those, or you can go and use the kind of dialogue that lets you select a file. We have Endgame. Be prepared for spoilers if you've not seen it. I think we're over a year now. I think that's fair. So we have files. So before we continue, let's talk about how we're going to access this. This is great. We're accessing it nicely in a web interface. We're going to need to access it via an API. There are a few extra things we're going to need to do. Oh, and one thing I forgot is I'm just going to name this table thoughts. You can name it anything you want. I just think it's a little nicer than table 1. And we will refer to the name of this table in our code. So not table 1, it is now thoughts. Over in your code editor, let's go and create a new file called .env. For those of you who haven't worked with .env files before, this is where we put key value pairs that we don't want shared with the world. We don't want to upload it to GitHub. We don't want other people. This is where you would put your API keys and secrets. We can access them in our code using the .env package we installed. But this is the kind of file you would exclude from a Git repository. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Now, there are 2 keys we're going to need here. We're going to need Airtable key You can call them anything you want, but you'll see where I use them, and you can change them for whatever name you want. And we're going to use Airtable base. Now, strictly speaking, Airtable base is not a secretive key. Airtable key is, Airtable base isn't. So, but I'm going to put them both in .env regardless. Let's talk about where we can get the key and the base. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit account. So we are now on our new Airtable account. I'm going to generate an API key. You can go ahead and copy that key, go over to your code editor and drop it in here. That's the key. Next, you're going to, oh, and if anyone ever sees your key, you can just regenerate it here and it invalidates the old key. Next, we're going to need to know the base ID. You can get to it by going to airtable.com/API. You can select your base. And right here at the top is the ID of the base. We're just going to drop that in base ID. Now, just an important note here, because I do think it is important, like it is responsible for me to tell you this. That API, Airtable key is the only thing stopping someone from accessing your bases. They're not scoped to your workplaces. They're not scoped to your bases, because why would they be? So to your workspaces or your bases, they're scoped to your entire account. So it is effectively the same as someone having access over your entire account. That's why I set up a new account, because I knew you'd see my key, and I use my Airtable account daily. So I didn't want to leak that key. Just be aware, unlike some other databases, the kind of risk modeling here is, it's something that you might want to consider. So it's really just that key. They will also need the base ID, but like the key is the secretive part. So just bear in mind that you really do want to keep that secret. And if other people know it, you should regenerate your key. So we're over here in this hello.js file. Let's create a new file, actually. Let's create one called airtable.js. And I'm just going to copy and paste the entire contents in. Now let's access the values in our .env file. Now, in order to do this as early as you can in a file, and so we'll do it right at the top, you require .env and then run the .config method. And now all of our values are available in an object called process.env. Next, let's include the Airtable Plus package that we installed. And now let's initialize this client. So we can go const base, we can go new Airtable. This takes one parameter, which is an object of options. Now there are three things we need to provide in here to get this to work. The first is a base ID. So we can go process.env.airtable. I think we called it Airtable base. We did, Airtable base. Next is the API key. Notice my capitalization of base ID and API key and other things I add here. It is important. So the value of this will be process.env.airtable key. And then finally, you need to provide a table name, as I said. So I will provide thoughts as the table name. So now base is equivalent to the thoughts table in our base, this base ID, and we use our API key to authenticate. Now inside of this function, we can create a new variable called const, and we can call this one thoughts. And the value of that can be await base.read. So this will grab every item in that base, in this table, and it is now an array which is assigned to thoughts. We can just console log thoughts. Before I show you what this does, I just want to kind of give you a heads up that inside of asynchronous functions in JavaScript, there are a couple of extra things we'll want to do. You generally will want to put a try catch block in, so we can catch all of our errors here. So console.error e, just so we don't lose those. And we want to put the value, like all of our computation, inside of the try block. So for example, if this failed for any reason, we'd jump down to the catch block and the error would be contained within this value e. So we have this try catch block. We always do want to return something from this endpoint though, from this Netlify function, even if there's an error. So we are going to want to create a new a new return value down here. Status code, you might want to be more specific, but I'm just going to use a general 500. And there is an error. And then I'll actually send through the error. We're not going to do anything more in this catch block. I just wanted to show you that this is the most rudimentary error handling that you can do in an asynchronous function in JavaScript. We'll just be focusing here. So if we hit save, because this is a new file that didn't exist before, it's not being watched for changes. So we'll want to end our npm run netlify server, and we'll want to just rerun it. And you should now see that a new file, or it will imminently appear in this build folder. There we are. Let's try this function and see how it works. So we're going to go curl http localhost 9000 / Airtable. Now we're still only returning OK, but we are console logging the thoughts. So we see now what has been console logged. I'm going to just shut the sidebar. What's been console logged is an array of objects. We have an ID, a created time, and inside of this fields property, this fields object, are each of the items that we have visible in our Airtable base. So let's just think about this. So we have this file is an array. Let's just take a quick look at this. So we have thoughts. Let's just grab the first thoughts and go .fields.file. And I want to see what the structure of this array is. So we'll save that and we'll just wait for the server to rebuild this cloud function automatically for us. And then we'll hit the function again. Okay, so this array is an object. So this array is full of objects. Each object has this URL, which is a direct.mp3 file. So this is what we're going to want here. So file 0, the first file, there should only be one file, but let's say accidentally we upload 2 MP3s, it will just pick the first one. And that will be .url. So that is a direct MP3 link. But you will notice that, I mean, we are just grabbing the first thoughts item, but the first thoughts item is not for today. The first thoughts item was for yesterday. So we're going to want to do something here to filter them and only grab the items that are for today. We could do this over here in our JavaScript. This is probably a nice time for me to show you in Airtable how you can use their formulas. So if we create a new field here, and we'll call this one, I don't know, today, and we can call it formula. Now, this can return any value we want. This is where we can just write, you can think about them as kind of like Excel formulas. All we're going to do in here is go, today is going to be, I'm just having a think. If today, so that is a built-in, this method returns the value for today. It's provided to you by Airtable. If today is equal to date, then return yes. Otherwise, that'll be a string. Otherwise, return no. And we'll hit save. Great. And we'll see the value for today, that's a dog playing with this toy, is yes, and the other ones are no. So if this was the 21st of June, or the 12th of June, because I can't type, there are no values for today. So now we can filter using the Airtable API. I'm just going to retype this 19th. For just the values that are today, and that just takes a little moment to update. It is the 19th of June. There we are today. Let's go back to our code. So inside of this method kind of bracket, you can provide a set of options in an object. So we're going to use one of the more complex options here called filter by formula. Now I'm going to write it and then we're going to talk about it because this syntax isn't particularly pretty to look at. So is the field called today, squiggly brackets, equal to, and then it's a string. So we're going to put double quotes in so we don't escape our string too early. Today is yes. Yes, this is actual syntax. My eyes, they burn. But this essentially says the field's called today And if the value is yes, only return values. So thoughts now will be a shorter array. If there were 2 items for today, this would have 2 items in it. So we're still going to just grab the first item. So now if I hit save and we wait for that to refresh, just wait for that. Sometimes hard to know when it's happened. Let's just find out. Let's curl it again. There we are. We're just printing a single MP3, endgame.mp3, and that is indeed the file for today. So that's the filtering portion done. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So now we have this URL. Let's figure out what we're going to do with it. So this whole time we've been speaking about this final project, we're kind of just been laying foundations down. But now it's time to actually do something with this MP3. And that will be to, when someone rings a phone number, to play that MP3 back to them, if it exists. So let's go and talk about how we're going to do that. This is the point where I am going to, this is the point, I think this logs me out. Yeah, really aggressive, 15 minutes, every 15 minutes. But here we go. We'll log back in here. We'll need this in a moment. I want to show you this file format that we have, this file structure called an NCCO, a Nexmo Call Control Object. This is a structure, an array of objects that you can return to a Vonage API application that describes what it should do with an incoming call. So for example, record. For example, connect it to an application. Wait for an input. So, press 1 to do X, input, then you'd expect an input. What we're going to use is stream. So we have this array and the object that we're going to use has an action of stream and a value and another one called stream URL. That's an array that just contains an MP3, and we already have the MP3. So let's figure this out. We are going to, actually, before we do this, let's do the work to get a number. So I have a promo code for you because while they're not expensive, you will need some credit in your account in order to use this. This promo code will also lift the restrictions on your account. So that is for those watching after the fact and they just need it a little bigger. MLH FEL, all caps 10. When you log in, oh, I've shut the chat. Let's pull that back up in case anyone does have questions. Okay, or not. Can I pull up the chat down here? Can I do it here in participants? Can I do it here in more chat? There we are. So, so what you'll do is you'll go into your dashboard down here in coupons, and you'll just pop the coupon in there, and that'll give you 10 euros, but it'll also lift the restrictions on your account, which is the more important thing. With your new credit, you can go down to numbers, buy a number, pick probably the country you're in, right? Because you'll need to ring it. It does need voice. We don't really care about SMS so much. You can pick any type. It doesn't really matter. We hit search, grab a whole list of numbers available. You can go ahead and buy that for your account. I already have a big enough pool of numbers that I'm not gonna take another one out of the pool. So you've got your phone number, wonderful. We're gonna go over to your applications. This was a little test application I was doing for a different project. And up here, you can pick create new application. You can give it any name you want. I'll call mine MLH Fellows Thought of Birthday. So let's look at this. What do we need to do here? Well, we're going to want voice capabilities, and it's prompted us for a few things. It's prompted us for a mandatory event URL. We'll send events to this URL when there's a status change in a call, such as a ringing or an answered or a busy, and that's mandatory. We don't have one of those yet. And we'll need the answer URL, which is what we're in the middle of building, required for inbound calls only, which is what we'll be doing. We'll be expecting an inbound call. When receiving an inbound call, we will make this request to a URL to download your NCCO. Unfortunately, we can't just put in localhost 9000 / function name because our API platform doesn't have access to our localhost. So we're going to need to get our localhost application and get it running in a public way. Eventually, this will be on Netlify, so we'll get to put Netlify URLs in here. But right now, we don't have those. We're running locally. Fortunately, there is a tool available. There is a tool available for this. I'm going to open a new terminal. Make sure, oh, you don't even need to be in the folder. You type npx ngrok, N-G-R-O-K, HTTP 9000. So this will, what ngrok does is it creates a one-use temporary URL that just goes straight to your local host. So this URL here is equivalent to localhost 9000, but it's accessible on the public web. This is not just good for testing APIs, but it's also good for like testing little local websites you may have if you want to share them with someone for some quick feedback. And it is equivalent to their local host. So as we go and update our file here, the ngrok URL will still be equivalent to the latest version that's running locally. Just a note here, the moment you quit this and rerun it, the URL will change. So if you're doing this, if you're following along and you're doing this over several sessions, or you accidentally close your terminal, just remember you'll need to come back to your application and change the URLs. So there's the URL. We can do any function name we want. I'm just going to go /event and /answer because I think they are the easiest to understand. And we will generate a new application. So if you did need to change it, you could just go here to edit, change the URLs, and then hit save. Then you can link a phone number to it, such as the one you just got. As you see, I already have just a pool, so I don't really need another one. So I'm just going to link this number to it. So now whenever a person calls this phone number, it will go and it will to this URL to find an NCCO. Meanwhile, it will be sending multiple events, ringing, answered, rejected, to the event URL, which again doesn't exist yet. Okay. So for those of you playing along, give me something in the chat. Just let me know you're still with me. Let me know I've not been muted for the last 45 minutes. So we have this event endpoint and we have this answer URL, and we need to do something with them. I'm going to go back over to here and just know that ngrok is running off at the side. So as you saw, an NCCO is going to be an array of objects. Now, the value in that array might be different. So I said we're going to use stream, which will have the MP3, but there is also this one here called talk. So you just provide a string and it will read it out. And there are options like you can get it to do different voices and different emphasis and different languages and stuff. But we're just going to write a string. We're going to use the string when there are no items of the day, when there are no thoughts of the day returned from Airtable. But where there is, we'll grab the MP3 and we'll stream it. So we'll need to write an if statement. So after we've created thoughts, I'm just going to comment this out. After we've created thoughts, let's create a new variable called NCCO, and that will just be an empty array. Then we'll check whether any items have come back, whether any items in Airtable have a value of yes for the field of today. So if thoughts.length is greater than 0, so there is at least one item returned. Let's just get some space in here so we can read. Then go ncco.push, push a new item into that array, and the value of that will be action stream and stream URL, an array with a single object, which is an MP3, which we already know. That is where there are no thoughts. We are going to, I'll just copy and paste this to be honest. ncco.push, the action this time is going to be talk, and the text will be, I don't know, sorry, we don't have a thought of the day yet. Oh, escape that, there we are. We don't have a thought of the day yet. So now NCCO will have, in any case, one object in it, either stream or talk. And then remember I said we always have to return a string. That's true, we can't just return this array, we need to turn it into a string. So we go json.stringify NCCO. And that is our function kind of done. I'll show you how to deploy it on Netlify and get that going. But that's it. Let's talk through what we're doing here. Actually, let's test it first. Let me not talk you through it before I know it works. All right, let me open my phone's dialer here. Let me just go back and refresh myself on the phone number. Here we are. 07451272782. All right, and I'm popping that on loudspeaker for us. Oh, I got a user busy. I think I got an error. Let's take a look. I'm not sure that did hit our endpoint. Oh, why didn't it hit our endpoint? Did anyone catch it? Because these are called Airtable.js and Hello.js. They are not called answer or event. So just to clarify what this event endpoint does, just before I retest this. So all it needs to do is return a status code of 200. That's all it needs to do. You might choose to do something funky with the data you're getting when you know people have answered. If you're building like a web panel that uses this, you might want to, change the UI accordingly, but it must return a 200. So we'll just rename hello into event because that's all it needs to do. All right. Now remember, these file names have changed. So we're just going to restart the server. Wonderful. Now I'm going to try calling that again. Oh, user busy again. Why? Let's take a look. All right. So also you'll notice in this build folder here, Airtable and Hello still exist. This is fine. You might want to delete it and then just restart, and it doesn't wipe old files that no longer exist or are renamed. That's fine. We won't be pushing this build folder up. Netlify will do that work on deploy. But what's going on here? Let's take a look. So we grab the thoughts, do an NCCO. Notice there's no error here. Now, ngrok also tells you when it gets requests. So we see it didn't even get a request. So there's something funky going on there. Let's just test our endpoint here. So if we go curl http localhost 9000/answer, we do see it returns an array with one object, action, stream URL, and then a URL straight to an MP3. So what's going on here? Let's take a look. /event/answer. I mean, we could even just curl just this URL and see if the URL is returning as we expect. And indeed it is. See, a 200, and we're getting a response. So why is this? Oh, do you want to know what? It's because I mistyped the number. That will do it, won't it? Right, let's do it again, but more carefully. Okay, 0745112. Oh, I looked at the number above right at the end because they are one number apart. So I typed in the wrong number. Okay, 27278, not 2, Kevin. And ring.
If we can't protect you, you can be damn sure we'll avenge it.
Oh, that wasn't a spoiler. I thought I used a different quote. Anyway, it works. Congratulations. Let's go and just change this, and we'll make this like the 21st of June. So now there is no item for today. And let's re-ring the number and just see what happens there.
Sorry, we don't have a thought of the day yet.
Okay, so that is our function working. Just your 10-minute reminder. All good, because now all we got to do is get this on GitHub and over to Netlify. So let's go ahead and do this. So we have our function. First thing we're going to want to do here is we are going to want to initialize. In fact, I'll end our local server because we no longer need it. And I want more focus on this terminal anyway. All right, first thing we're going to do, hopefully, is you all have GitHub accounts. You've used Git before, so I'm not going to spend too long kind of showing you how Git and GitHub work. But what we're going to do first is go over to github.com/new, and that will take us to the new repository dialog. So I'll call this MLH Fellows Thought of the Day. This will also be where you can find the code after the workshop and create our repository. Copy this URL to our clipboard And here we're now going to go git init to initialize a new GitHub repository. So, okay, don't show again, chill out. Git init. Then we are going to go git remote add origin and the URL that we just copied from GitHub. So now they are linked. Git add dot git commit dash m. So this is where we put our commit message. So, oh, what happened there? Anyway, git commit dash m initial commit. Perfect. So that was our, oh, I think I made an error there. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the thing you should never do, rmrf.git. Because what haven't we created? We have not created a file to exclude this .env file, and also our node modules folder, also our .vs code folder, and finally this functions/build. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll create a .git ignore, and in here we'll go .env node underscore modules / functions / build, and this VS code directory that was just created for us without us asking for it or really wanting it. So let's do that again, git init. And you'll notice that the files and folders that we just put in git ignore are kind of faded out to show that they're not being tracked by Git. We'll go git remote add origin and URL. Git add dot git commit dash m initial commit. Now, before we commit, I think with everything that's going on, I am just going to show you straight off the bat how we're going to change our default branch name from master to main. So I'm just going to show you the couple of quick commands you need to do that, and then what you need to do in GitHub to get that to kind of match up and not be too much of a pain. So we're just going to write git branch dash m, old branch name, master, new branch name, main. And we are now on the main branch, which has the same history. Then we're going to go git push dash u origin and to our main branch. So that will now get pushed up to GitHub without that huge black hole of a node modules folder. And if we refresh here, we'll now see our main branch is right there. Yeah, there we are. And I think this might have just changed in literally the last day, because before you had to go in and change your default branch and delete the old one, I think. Anyway, so now we have our main branch, which is ace, and something we should all be doing. You'll notice the git ignore file is there, a distinct lack of our .m file with our API keys, function/build is gone, no modules is gone, and the .vs code file is gone. File or folder? Folder is gone. Now let's get this over to Netlify. So we're over on Netlify, and we're gonna go and log in. We're gonna hit new site from Git, and you can pick GitHub. You'll need to give it permissions to your account if it doesn't already have it, and it will go and list all your repositories. Select the one that we've just created. So MLH, fellows, I think there'll be a few here, we'll see. There it go, do its thing. All right, oh yeah, I forgot about those. Anyway, MLH fellows thought of the day. Now, let's talk about what needs to happen here. We need to give it a build command, so every time it goes and finds changes in GitHub, it will try and redeploy our site, and we can give it a command to run. We want it to go build our functions, and you'll remember right at the beginning, we created an npm script for this. So we can just write npm run netlify build. That will build our Netlify functions. Go away. In the advanced, you can ignore the published directory. In the advanced build settings, we're also going to want to create 2 items, and this is how we get our environment variables into our production environment. So we're going to go to our .m file. We're going to grab our Airtable key. Airtable key. And I think I might still get in before the hour, but we'll see. And we have Airtable base. Airtable base. And paste that in, and then hit deploy site. We'll give that just a moment to deploy. It comes with a randomly generated name, which you can change in the site settings. For the sake of this, I'm not really too fussed. We can watch the deploy log go. So we can just watch that go. Sometimes you just need to refresh it to get a little update. Here we are. So it's now running npm run netlify build. It's going and doing all of that. There we are. It's going and doing that. It's packaging the 2 endpoints it found. Netlify build complete. 2 new functions to upload. Site is live, and that's what we want to see. So now this is live on this URL. Over in the functions tab, we can click on either of our functions. We can see the full URL of our new functions, and it is HTTPS, the name of your Netlify site, .netlify.app/.netlify/functions, and then / whatever the name of your individual function is. Just as a note, if you had any console logs in your function and they trigger, you can find them here in the function log. And all we've got to do now is take this URL, go over to our application view in the Vonage API dashboard for our application. We can just put that URL in. So this one's /event. And this one is /answer. Hit save changes. So now this is no longer going to our local machine via ngrok. It now is going straight to our Netlify application. And our Netlify application can access Airtable because we gave it the environment variables. Now let's do a final check by calling the number.
If we can't protect you, you can be damn sure we'll avenge it.
I thought I'd be proper moody when I recorded it. Anyway, that is it. That is the workshop. Let's very quickly recap in the minute we have left what happened there. Oh yeah, and you can see every time the function runs, how long it took, memory usage. And I think, let's just take a look. Netlify functions pricing, just so you kind of understand how this might differ from your standard functions. So what we care about is here. So you have, we're not using Netlify build, sorry, we're using Netlify functions. This page has slightly changed the way it looks. Netlify functions, here we are. So it's a combo of how many times you call the function and how long the functions take to run. That's essentially it. So you do at scale, you care about shaving those seconds off, or shaving those milliseconds off. At this scale, we really don't mind. So 125,000 runs a month for a total of 100 hours. So we set up a Netlify function. Let's take a look at the code once more, just do a quick recap. We have this event endpoint. All that does is return 200. We have this answer endpoint. What this does is load in our environment variables, load the Airtable package and initialize it with our environment variables. And then in the try bit of the try catch block, we go off to Airtable and grab any thoughts that have a value of today, yes, as set by the formula in Airtable. We set up an empty NCCO array. If anything comes back from this query, we'll create a stream action in the NCCO with the MP3. And if there isn't any, then we just respond with a text to speech, and then we return with a stringified version of the NCCO, catching any errors and providing a 500 error should that be the case. Don't forget the git ignore, very important, especially for the .m file. The others aren't as important, but the .m file in particular is quite important. Really nice, I'm really into it. A slightly longer and slower version of this workshop is up on YouTube. I'm sure there'll be a recording of this if you want a copy of just this one. Just to be clear, do not share your API secrets in particular with people. I'm going to go and regenerate my secrets after this workshop, for example, and before it's published. So yeah, that's my bit done. I think that's kind of the end of the recording bit. I'm not sure what happens now. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm in your Discord, so the fellows Discord. So if you have questions, I'll take them there, or I'll take them here, whatever is desired and allowed.
Yeah, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to unmute or type it really quickly into the chat box. It looks like you're getting some some very thank yous. So great work.
Yes, thank you very much, folks. Cool. Just while I wait for questions, should there be any for a couple of minutes. I did a workshop did a workshop a couple of weeks ago on building a serverless, very similar setup actually, except we use MongoDB instead of Airtable, a serverless video conferencing application. So there's a recording of that, and then I'm doing one, I think, next week on building a Facebook bot. How does Nexmo work? It's a very broad question. I'm not quite sure. If you could slim it down just a bit, that would that would be great. The calling part. So still a bit broad. I will try and answer. So we have these virtual numbers. We buy them from carriers, so they appear as real numbers. We have a whole set of APIs. So when you call a number, we essentially connect it to an application. At its most basic, that application is just an NCCO, and we just kind of go through it because we understand the structure of an NCCO, right? And what we should do with data returned. You can also do things like putting people, oh, right, that is a much more specific question. Someone said, is it possible to put your own phone number as opposed to buying a number on the Vonage platform? I believe we call this number porting, and I think it's okay in the US, not in the UK and not in most countries. You need to buy a virtual number. You need to buy a virtual number to use it. But again, they appear like local numbers. The number I just rang looks like a UK mobile number, and there are landline numbers as well. In fact, you can specify that when you go and grab a number. You can, when you buy a number, you can specify it or specify a pattern. But if you're looking to kind of take your existing phone number and add like this programmable layer on top of it, that isn't something we do. You need to use one of our virtual numbers. Does anyone have any other questions? Well, as I said, if you have any questions, I'm in your Discord. There's a lot going on, which is great to see you all chatting, but if you want me in particular, at me, and that means I'll definitely get a notification and see your message. As I said, I've already done one of these on building a serverless video conferencing application using Netlify Functions and MongoDB and the Vonage video API, and I'm doing one, as I said, I think it's next week, on building a Facebook bot with our messages API, which will be really nifty because you can use the same API for SMS, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Viber for now. So that should be really fun. I'm quite enjoying that workshop. Right, I won't hold anyone here for questions, I suppose. Yeah, as I say, mention me on Discord and I'll happily answer. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was super great and wonderful. And go from there.
Cool.
Bye, everyone.
Bye for now.